Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. If you're building and innovating on the Anthropic platform, you know firsthand that keeping your architecture up to date is literally half the battle. So today, we're breaking down a highly specific but absolutely crucial platform update that just rolled out on June 22nd, 2026. We are looking at the major routing change affecting MCP tunnels. Now, if you're not fully up to speed, MCP tunnels let you manage specific tunnel-based connections directly through the platform. But the actual mechanics of how you do that, well, they've just shifted, and we need to talk about exactly what that means for your code base.
Is your MCP tunnel integration about to break? Yeah, it's exactly the kind of question that instantly creates that familiar, mild panic for literally any developer reading through release notes, right? Because when an API routing update drops out of nowhere, your immediate thought goes straight to technical debt and emergency patches. Well, take a breath. Today, we're going to clear up all that uncertainty. We're looking at exactly what changed, why it actually matters, and how you can adapt your systems without a single second of downtime.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the big routing shift, moving from admin to Claude.
Which brings us right to Section 2, old versus new endpoints, where your requests need to go. We're going to do a direct comparison here to show you exactly what needs to be updated.
And this brilliantly illustrates the structural shift we're dealing with. Previously, if you wanted to manage your MCP tunnels, you were routing those requests to the admin API, right? Specifically via the /v1/organization/tunnels endpoint. But as of this update, that home is gone. Everything is officially moved over to the Cloud API, and the path itself is simplified way down to just /v1/tunnels. So, this isn't just some tiny patch. It's a fundamental change in how Anthropic actually wants us developers interacting with the MCP tunnels feature. Your base URL is changing, the API surface is changing, and as we're about to see, your authentication is completely changing too.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 3, your migration action plan. This is your pragmatic 4-step developer checklist.
Look, just knowing the endpoint changed is really only step 1. Now we need a rapid-fire execution plan. If you've already got an integration running against that old admin endpoint, here is your exact 4-step checklist to migrate successfully. Step 1, swap that endpoint path in your code over to v1/tunnels. Simple enough. Step 2, double-check that your base URL is actually calling the Claude API, not the admin API. That is such a common stumbling block. Step 3, you've got to inject a specific beta header into your request. And step 4, verify your token scope. If you check off those 4 boxes, you've completely covered the change based on Anthropic's docs. But we really need to zoom in on steps 3 and 4 for a second, because that is exactly where most integrations are going to accidentally fail if you aren't paying close attention. So the crucial point is this exact header string right here. Every single request you make to the new endpoint absolutely requires this: Anthropic Beta MCP Tunnels 2026-0622. Guys, this isn't optional. This is literally how Anthropic gates access to their preview features. By slapping this header on there, you're explicitly telling the API exactly which version of the tunnels feature you're opting into. If you forget this, the Claude API is just going to flat out reject your request. And right alongside that header, there's a strict new credential requirement. Your WIF or Workload Identity Federation credentials have to carry a very precise scope. Specifically, Workspace Managed Tunnels. If you're currently operating with a token that lacks this exact scope, any request you route to the new Claude API endpoint is going to fail immediately. No way around it. So before you even think about pushing any migration code to production, you have to check your authentication setup and make absolutely sure this scope is provisioned correctly. All right, let's lower the blood pressure a bit for Section 4, the migration grace period. Because yes, the clock is ticking. Whenever an API shifts homes like this, the absolute biggest question in the room is always about timelines. Namely, do you have to move right now? Do you need to drop everything, completely abandon your current sprint, and push an emergency fix? It's pretty much the universal developer reaction when facing an undocumented breaking change. Well, the short answer is no, but, and it's a really big but, the clock is ticking. See, Anthropic has been pretty generous here. They've kept the old admin endpoint alive during a dedicated migration window. So if you're currently running a production app against the old /v1/organizations/tunnels endpoint, it's not going to just break on you today. You've got a grace period. That being said, you absolutely need to treat this as a formally planned migration.
Get it on the calendar, schedule the work. Do not look at this as a chore you can just put off indefinitely, because that legacy endpoint is definitely getting sunsetted.
And that brings us to Section 5, still a research preview. Handle with care. Let's slow the pacing down significantly right here, because we really need to talk about the overarching status of this feature. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the explicit terminology Anthropic is using. MCP tunnels are still officially considered a research preview. Now, in Anthropic speak, that's a very polite but firm way of saying, hey, this is experimental. It means the entire feature, including this shiny new endpoint we've been talking about, is still completely subject to further potentially breaking changes. You are highly advised not to build rigid, hard dependencies on this current behavior without engineering some serious flexibility, or at least some solid fallbacks into your system to account for its experimental nature. Now, if you're gearing up to tackle this update, you're going to need the right resources. For the full migration checklist, the complete API reference, and just some genuinely fantastic plain English coverage of everything happening in the Claude ecosystem, you definitely need to visit claudemaster.net. It's this brilliant independent manual that hands you the raw technical specs and the actual developer implications, totally free of all the marketing spend. It's exactly the tool you need to get this migration done efficiently.
So we're going to wrap up today's explainer with a little question you can take straight back to your engineering team. Your base URL has officially changed, but has your technical debt? Are you building resilient integrations that can gracefully handle a research preview shifting right under your feet? Or are these kinds of updates constantly catching you off guard? It's honestly a great opportunity to take a hard look at the flexibility of your architecture. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today to break down this MCP Tunnels update. Happy coding, good luck with migration, and I will see you in the next explainer.